Hello everyone, welcome back to OCD Recovery. Today I'm at a very beautiful view. I know the depth, it's almost hard to tell like just how insane the depth of where I am is, but that mountain behind me over there, that's about 12,000 feet probably. So let me get back to where I was. So today I'm going to talk about a really important video, and because I don't have a whiteboard and I'm in the middle of the mountains, I have paper. So if you keep seeing me look at the paper, I'm going to basically, it's giving me how I wanted to structure this, because Momin gave me the idea for this video, and it's basically about what happens when we put too much emphasis on good days. Now, this isn't to say that having good days is you don't ever want to be excited about having a good day, but what happens typically is on the OCD recovery journey is that people will put too much emphasis on having a good day, and this is what humans do in general. And when we just have days and we have good moments and bad moments, when we rate an entire day as good or bad, when in the reality, if you have a bad day, you just maybe have more bad moments throughout that day. There was more than likely, even if it was only a few seconds or a minute at a time, moments that were not as bad. This is why measuring things in full black and white terms tend to be not good for the majority of humans, especially OCD sufferers. So I'm going to title the video more than likely why OCD seems to come back when you put too much emphasis on good days. And we've all done this. So before I go any further, you could please subscribe down below. And if you see me squinting a little bit, literally the sun is directly in my eyes right now. So the first thing I want to talk about is that when you're going through OCD recovery, you have to remember that you have a disorder. So even when you reach full recovery or, on the path to recovery, you have to maintain the areas of where you were. And we all have setbacks and we all have relapses and stuff like that. The problem is when you first start to have a few good days in a row, and understandably so, you put so much emphasis on that and you're like, OCD is gone and I'm just going to go on my way. The reality is OCD is more than likely genetic, and it's not gone. It's not going anywhere. You can't get rid of the OCD gene. You will always have OCD. That doesn't mean you're always going to suffer chronically from OCD. You're not going to always have chronic anxiety, guilt, shame, etc., severe intrusive thoughts, feeling urges, sensations if you bring the core fear down. But the reality is Kirsty talked about, when you get to OCD recovery, when you reach recovery, or the state that you think is recovery, even though the state of recovery is the lack of chronic anxiety, shame, or guilt. There's a lot of different subjective definitions to that. Basically, recovery is where you can barely tell you have OCD or not. That's basically what OCD recovery is. So it never went away. So what happens is say you're 2 months into recovery, you've been applying the tools, you read the reading list, and then what happens is you have a really good couple of days, maybe your first couple of good days in a while, and you jump on that. And understandably so why you do jump on that. But what happens is when you jump on that, you put so much emphasis on it. What does OCD love? OCD loves fear. So when it knows you're afraid of something, it jumps right back in there. So basically, the second thing I wanted to talk about is the importance of gratitude and the perspective shift. This is something that Momin wanted me to talk about. So, take advantage of your good days. Now, I'm going to give you the backwards of what most people do on their good days. On your good days is a really good time to work on your disputing or maybe your reading homework, especially if you're in the first part of your recovery journey. Because what happens usually is people will say, I'm feeling really good today, and then they don't work on anything. There's nothing inherently wrong with that, but use it as a chance where you have more mental energy. Maybe you're a little bit more concentrated. You're not as tired to work on the recovery tools. What people usually do is they feel great, and then they're like, I'm never going to work on my recovery again during today because I just feel great. And that might not be the best option. When you're having your good days, it's very easy to take your eye off the ball. This is what Momin was talking about when he sent me a personal message. People they'll take their eye off the prize. And while you're going through OCD recovery, it's a very arduous journey. Arduous, I never use that word. That's funny. It is a very tough journey. There's no doubting that. So it can be really easy to fall off track when you're having those good moments and you're just like, you know what? I had some good moments. Forget about OCD. It's gone. The reality is it's more than likely not gone. I see a lot of people in the OCD recovery forum, the Instagram and the Facebook group, say stuff like OCD went away for a month and it came back. OCD didn't go away. When you reach recovery and you're very good at maintaining OCD recovery and you understand the tools, there is nowhere for fear to latch. That doesn't mean there's no chance, 100% chance it will never come back, but you have a pretty good grasp. That's why people like Rob, 15 years of no relapses and stuff like that. A lot of people believe they will get under a fear. And then one thing I do want to talk about, especially with the good days, more than likely, most people with chronic OCD will suffer from more than one fear. or one theme as we title them. Still all the same thing as OCD. And that can get people really discouraged. So you might have a good day from one particular fear, then inside that good day from one fear, you have a bad day to the other. So putting too much emphasis on those moments can be really problematic for you. Another thing Moment wanted me to talk about, and I definitely do agree with, is the importance of understanding how the anxiety cycle works. So let me give you a pure example of me right now. Okay, 15 months into actively working on recovery. I put video games away May 1st of 2020. That was my biggest compulsion. Today was a lot of great moments in my day, minimal anxiety, but as I was driving here, because I still have a fear of being judged, and I don't really accept myself unconditionally, so I'll think stuff like, well, you know, what happens if someone sees me making this video and then makes fun of me? So like right now I have like a 2 or a 3 free-floating anxiety right now. My heart's pounding a little faster, my throat feels a little tight. That's completely okay. You would never know that looking at me because I handle it pretty well and I wear it like an uncomfortable coat. But understanding how anxiety works is so key to this entire journey. This is why Claire Week's Self-Help for Your Nerves and Paul David's At Last the Light is really beneficial when you're learning how to understand the anxiety cycle. So when you have moments like I do right now, having a backdoor spike at this very moment, it's not catching me. Do you know what I mean? It's not catching me. And you might have, someone like me, I might have lingering physical manifestations for a couple years, and I could still work on my recovery while that's happening. And even on my good days or moments where I'm having good moments, as I like to say, I could still work on that as well. So when this is the biggest problem with rating your days as entirely good or bad or anything like that. Like this is a good person and that's a bad person. We know that's not true. We know the same thing like when people say, I have a bad day. You just had some moments in your day that were probably worse than other days. But what happens is the OCD person tries to preserve that good day. So you'll have 2, 3 good days. This happens a little bit more when you don't understand OCD and the anxiety cycle. So it might be a couple days early, a couple moments earlier into the cycle. Sorry. A little bit early in the OCD recovery journey, and then you might, I'm gonna fly on my phone, and you really might start putting a lot of emphasis on that. You might say to yourself, like, I don't want to lose this, and you really are driving to look for a feeling, and that can be really problematic for many. So the internal thermostat is one of the biggest compulsions mentally for all OCD sufferers. It's really, really, really big for somatic OCD because you're waking up and you're like, does it feel, am I more aware today? Am I less aware today? Do I have more hyper awareness of my physical manifestations? And you're going to automatically do that until you start bringing the fear down. The biggest misconception I see in anyone giving OCD advice, there's 2 things I see. We'll talk about one of them. The biggest mistake is that people think you can just stop ruminating. On will. You could stop the outward rumination where you're engaging analytically. The automatic rumination is going to play in the background until the fear comes down. That is 100% missed by most people, and that cannot be, that has to be talked about because people feel really lost. So you wish it was gone on the good days. You're like, man, I want to hold on to this feeling forever. And then what happens, the next day you wake up and you're chronically anxious, for an example. So the last thing I want to talk about is accepting yourself that you have OCD. So this is unconditional self, so USA, and unconditional life, ULA, unconditional life acceptance. You have a disorder, so things are going to be a little bit different for you in your life. You might not be able to do things in a non-balanced manner that's maybe someone else who doesn't have a disorder does, where they might be black and white about something and it doesn't cause, say, neurosis. So Albert Ellis talks about this. Not every single person who has irrational beliefs, which is almost everyone on earth, at least has a couple, are going to have signs of neurosis or chronic anxiety or chronic shame or guilt because they don't have a disorder. But people like us, it really tends to lock on us. And it tends to be a little bit more of a problem. So accepting that your life might not be, you know, you might have different difficulties on your journey than other people might not have. You know, accepting yourself for your particular fears, accepting that it might take you 2-3 years to recover, accepting that you might have lingering physical manifestations of anxiety for a couple of years and stuff like that. That's super important to talk about because in order to reach the state that all of us want to be at or would prefer to be at, highly prefer. Remember, we don't need it. We would just prefer it. That's key in the book because you could still do everything when you're chronically anxious. I'm anxious right now, not too bad, but I'm here right now in this beautiful scenery. I hiked the Manitou Incline today, the stair stepper I always do with my weighted vest on. So I do things you know, when I'm having anxiety, when I was really having bad, because most of the people that watch my video understand, I would think, that most of the stuff I have is physical sensation or physical manifestation of anxiety. So I had to accept it about myself, you know. Sometimes I would have thoughts like, why can't it just be intrusive thoughts and not just intrusive sensations and feelings? That would be so much more bearable. But that's just what I think in my mind, but that's not true, because we have people that don't have so much physical anxiety symptoms, and yet they could be internally tortured by their thoughts. So it feel as real as it can get for every single person. And the key is you want to go towards discomfort. So going towards discomfort is really, 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 really important. And it's something that we really don't want to overlook. I see a lot of people in the OCD community getting ill advice from people, and I understand why they're giving them this advice. You know, create safe places, and talking about the constant need for vulnerability, and talking about all these other things that have great aspects in life. The problem is a lot of these things put your box small in life, especially when you have OCD. So again, there's nothing wrong with safe spaces, if you want to call them that, or boundaries and stuff like that. I've talked about boundaries in a recent video, but I would watch out for people that put too much emphasis on boundaries, safe places, trigger words, and stuff like that. Because for us with a disorder, the more emphasis you look on that, the more ammo you're giving OCD. Remember, the biggest mistake that humans make is pretty simple, is they want to change the external environment instead of working on the internal things. If you go your whole entire life trying to change everything around you to fit your personal needs, you're going to fail. What happens is we can't change the activating events more than likely. All we can change is our belief system and move from there. And there's a lot of unfortunate things that happen to people in life, like having 3 or 4 good days in a row and then having a really bad setback. And setbacks and relapses might happen every other day in the first couple of months of recovery. You might go 8 months. I'm sure Paul Little wouldn't mind me telling you this, but we had a couple phone calls a couple weeks ago. You know, he was 8 months with no issue, and then he had a really bad relapse. So it's going to be different for every single person. So I really hope you enjoyed this video. I'm actually going to take the camera off, and I'm going to show you guys a couple things, because I do think this is a really just beautiful area. So my car is, so there's a road here. It's called Gold Camp. It goes all the way around. You probably can't see it in the video, but there's a path right there I do. And so those mountains up there, the clouds are all in, but the road goes all the way around, and it goes down. So if you come over here, this is really cool. Look what I found. So I found, there's a couple Buddha statues right here, and then you just go right there. And then you can see the cars down there. So, you know, this is just a really beautiful place to just come up here and sit. I came up here a lot when I was really suffering. And it was just a really good thing to just see just like how small we are in the grand scheme of like scenery. It's quite, you know, quite crazy when you really think about it. But thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day.